everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. In this video, we're going to be talking about the Great Salt Lake, the Dead Sea, comparing the two, and what's happening to both of them. So this article came to my attention because of a subscriber named Dawn. Excuse me. She sent this to me in Facebook via Messenger to my Christian Homestead account. And because her full name is on the message, I don't want to like show the screen with like her name on it, just in case she wants to keep that private. So I'm going to read what she said though. She says, so she shared this to me, and then she says, "You never know what will cause anything. I remember sitting locked in my home thinking, a pandemic? I never knew a pandemic would strip us of everything. Perhaps something like this," referring to the article, "perhaps something like this could encourage a lot of saints to leave the Salt Lake Valley." This article was interesting. And yeah, now the Great Salt Lake, I want to show you guys, if you're not familiar with the geography of Utah. Let's just do Salt Lake City. Let's go to the map. Okay. So the Salt Lake Valley is right here, southeast of the Great Salt Lake. But directly to the east, you have Ogden, which is also for Utah. It's one of the main populated areas or metro areas. It is considered its own separate metro area when they're looking at the census and stuff like that. You have the Ogden area, Salt Lake, and then Provo. So the Great Salt Lake, it really affects mostly, yes, the Salt Lake Valley, as well as all these towns up here in, oh gosh, it's been a while, but I think it's Weber and Davis County, Ogden, Syracuse, Farmington, Bountiful. Bountiful is where I got married. So it affects two of the three main metro areas in Utah. So you got, let's just do them again. So you got the Ogden metro area, Salt Lake, Provo, and then down here in southern Utah, you have St. George. And I wouldn't really consider anywhere else very, excuse me, very sizable. Maybe kind of Moab, but that's pretty much it. Logan, I guess the Logan area up here. I don't think that they're affected too much. They don't have very much exposure to the Great Salt Lake. They're far enough away. So this is the area in question, and well, look at what they're talking about with the Great Salt Lake. Let's get into it. I'm so sorry about my throat. I think it's allergy. I'm not sure what it is. Okay. As the Great Salt Lake dries up, Utah faces an environmental nuclear bomb. And don't get caught up on this word, environmental. This has like an actual potential negative effect on the residents that live around this lake. Let's get into it. I mean, they themselves, not just like birds or plants or anything like that. Okay, Salt Lake City. If the Great Salt Lake, which has already shrunk by two-thirds, continues to dry up, here's what's in store. The lake's flies and brine shrimp would die off. And by the way, if you've ever seen sea monkeys, like at the store, like in the kids section, first of all, I would encourage you to get that for your kids because it's really fun. Basically, it's just like a little tiny plastic aquarium. It's a closed system. You don't really have to do anything except for add a tiny bit of food, and you just add water, and then the eggs hatch, and they're really fun. So an alternative name for brine shrimp is sea monkeys. Anyway, that's a tangent. The lake's flies and brine shrimp. Oh, and by the way, the only thing that can survive in the Great Salt Lake in terms of anything more than like algae and stuff is brine shrimp, would die off. Scientists warn it could start as soon as this summer. Now, why is that? Okay, we've visited this map a number of times. Probably has something to do with this. This is the Drought Monitor, the U.S. Drought Monitor. And, just like you would think, dark red is where it's the worst. This is as of right now. This is the current map. They update it every so often. Like it seems like maybe like every week or every other week, something like that. But Utah's not looking too good right now. Utah is not looking very good. It is almost completely engulfed in red, right? Um, Recently, we've been talking about Texas and uh, New Mexico because there's been some really large wildfires there. In fact, New Mexico had its largest wildfire in state history recently. I did a video about that. But right now, the western United States is going through a mega drought, the likes of which have not been seen in 1,200 years. Now, this is a cool site because you can kind of go through and you can look at different maps like through time. And the interesting thing is the heartland it always looks pretty good in terms of drought. In fact, as of right now, so this map was updated on the 9th of this month. Look at Missouri. Missouri is like completely unaffected. There's no yellow, orange, red in Missouri. There is in Kansas, but that's like the western part of the state. That's not where I live, by the way. Um, so maybe in terms of drought, this is a good place to be. I'm always trying to get people to move to the heartland. Maybe I shouldn't be doing that. I don't know, but maybe do it if you feel prompted. Look at the entire United States. There aren't very many states that don't have some drought as of the 9th of June. The only other states are, let's look at it. Ohio, not Michigan because the Upper Peninsula, the UP has some, but Ohio, uh, Pennsylvania. I see a little yellow in West Virginia, so I'm not going to count that. Um, Vermont, and that's it. That's it. Look, even Hawaii and Alaska, Puerto Rico, the Marshall Islands. Well, not American Samoa. So that's it. That's incredible. Missouri. We all know the significance of Missouri. Could there be a spiritual lesson here? Could it be? And I'm not trying to judge, my former um, people, but I've seen the Western United States morally kind of decline as it's strived to kind of fit in with the West Coast and want to emulate California and Washington and Oregon and stuff like that. Over the years, it has, and we went over the scripture in DNC talking about that upon my house shall it begin, meaning the separation of the wheat from the tares and the judgments, and um, this could be part of it. I've done a whole video about that, so go check that out. But yeah, it's not looking too good out west. And if you're in Vegas, holy cow, look at that. That is dark red, this entire area, including Area 51. Sorry. um, yeah, Arizona, not good. Okay, so let's get back to the article. Okay, so as soon as this summer, the flies and brine shrimp could die off, threatening the 10 million migratory birds that stop at the lake annually to feed on the tiny creatures. Ski conditions at the resorts above Salt Lake City, a vital source of revenue, would deteriorate. The lucrative attraction of magnesium and other minerals from the lake could stop. Most alarming, okay, now this is the serious thing right here. It's all serious, but this is like maybe the top thing. Most alarming, the air surrounding Salt Lake City would occasionally turn poisonous. Uh, well, I don't know about you, but to me that sounds like a problem. That sounds like a problem. Having grown up in Salt Lake, okay, I'm from like from Murray. Actually, you see Murray right here in the middle of the valley. Uh, as far as Murray, and I'm sure I've smelt it in other places too. I've been all over this valley, but occasionally the wind will blow from the direction of the Great Salt Lake, and then you'll smell it in the valley, and it stinks. The Great Salt Lake stinks. It's nasty. It's gross. So I can only imagine one of those days when you can smell the Great Salt Lake. And oh, by the way, not only is it stench, but it's a little bit of poisonous air too. Okay. Again, think about these areas that are affected. The Salt Lake Valley, which is the most populated area, and then up here. I think the Ogden area. I think it's the third largest. Let's see. I'm gonna see if I can find it really quick. Uh, Utah metro areas. Utah statistical areas. Oh, so look at this. It goes Salt Lake first. This is as of 2019. Uh, the Salt Lake City statistical area or metro area, 1.2 million, and then the next largest is Ogden with 683,000, and then the Provo area, and then Logan, and then after that St. George. Okay, so the two largest statistical areas, metro areas, these are the ones that stand to suffer the most from what's going on with the Great Salt Lake, with potential poisonous air that might be blowing your way soon. And I'm not trying to be like dire or anything like that. We do have to be realistic. I would still encourage you to, with what's happening with gas and rising prices and uh, potential food shortages, don't freak out. Just stop it. Okay, think about other times in history. Think about the Great Depression. Did people live through the Great Depression? Yes, they did. Was the Depression forever? No, it wasn't. It was temporary. Was World War One, World War Two, were those permanent? No, they were temporary. Okay, we'll get through this. It might suck for a little bit. Uh, some people will undoubtedly die as the years go on and different things happen, but we'll get through it. And being righteous, you should not fear. Stop looking at the dreadful day of the Lord and start focusing on the great day of the Lord. Okay? So, so poisonous hair. The lake bed contains high levels of arsenic, and as more of it becomes exposed, windstorms carry that arsenic into the lungs of nearby residents who make up 3/4 of Utah's population. 3/4 of Utah's population. And again, uh, Utah is obviously has the highest population of Latter-day Saints in the United States. So maybe upon his house does it begin judgments and things that separate wheat and tares, and and also to try and wake up those that maybe have been going down a wrong path that can change and get back on the covenant path. Okay, quote. This is from Joel Ferry, a Republican state lawmaker and rancher who lives on the north side of the lake. We have this potential environmental nuclear bomb that's going to go off if we don't take some pretty dramatic action. As climate change continues to cause record-breaking drought, there are no easy solutions. Saving the Great Salt Lake would require letting more snow melt from the mountains flow to the lake, which means less water for residents and farmers. That would threaten the region's breakneck population growth and high value agriculture, something state leaders seem reluctant to do. So Well, here you have a catch-22, don't you? Because you have people flooding into Salt Lake, mostly from these states right here. Okay, I can't say that for sure. I haven't seen statistics, but forever, even back when I was living in Salt Lake in the 90s, early 2000s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, in 2000, well, when we, okay, in the early 2010s, the very, very early 2010s, that entire time, my whole life in Utah, people had always been coming from California, and that has only increased. Um, Utah has a lot of jobs in this area. There's a lot of like high tech jobs. There's like the Adobe complex over here, or like they have like a big building there, and uh, Micron. I don't know if Micron's still a thing. It probably is. It's anyway. So, and there's like tons of other stuff too. There's other things going on. They're doing well economically. It's bringing people in. They're trying to avoid high prices over here and also trying to get good jobs from other places. And so they're growing, which in turn makes it impossible for other people that don't make as much to buy a house, let alone a homestead, let alone a house, which we were looking at Utah. But no, everything's too expensive. And that's the case with the entire everything west of Kansas is just super duper expensive. So anyway, catch 22. Uh, a growing population in this area, uh, and they need water. You need more water for a growing population. But do you take some of that water to try and stop the poisonous gas? Okay, so would you rather have, plenty of water or, enough water, or would you rather be breathing poisonous gas? Which one do you choose? And I don't know, maybe it'll come down to not having to choose between one or the other, but it doesn't sound like this is going to be an easy fix. Um, Utah's dilemma raises a core question as the country heats up. How quickly are Americans willing to adapt to the effects of climate change, even as those effects become urgent, obvious, and potentially catastrophic? Well, let me tell you something, New York Times. My feeling is that climate change is not caused by who you say it is. I think that it's part of the planet's programmed natural course as it transitions into a terrestrial world. I could be wrong about that, but I tend to think that. I don't think that there is any stopping it. I don't think that there is any stopping it. But anyway, the stakes are alarmingly high, according to Timothy D. Hawks, a Republican lawmaker who wants more aggressive action. Otherwise, he said the Great Salt Lake risks the same fate as California's Owens Lake, which went dry decades ago, producing the worst levels of dust pollution in the United States and helping to turn the nearby community into a veritable ghost town. Uh, okay, well, we don't want Salt Lake and Ogden and the surrounding cities. We don't want them to become a ghost town, right? Is that potentially what's going to happen? Uh, probably not that extreme, but I don't know. Who the heck knows? Let's look at Lake Owens in California. Where's that? Okay, Lake Owens. Let's look at the satellite. Okay, so it's completely dry from what it looks like. There's Keeler up here. Doesn't look like it's a very big town. How about we look at the street view? Oh, froze up. I hate that. Whatever. Well, just forget it. So that's what happened to that community. And then he says it's not just fear mongering, it can actually happen. Well, that is quite alarming for a major American city and populated area. Okay, here's a side by side. Here's what the Great Salt Lake looked like in 1987. This is a picture from the USGS, I guess, and then what it looks like in 2021. That is quite alarming. That is quite alarming, and that's a pretty dramatic change. Okay, there's no need to really go on with this article. I don't think I highlighted anything else from here. Okay, I looked up this other article. I just kind of like looked through the two of them. Climate change and the siphoning of water from its mountain source are behind this alarming evaporation. The population of Salt Lake City has exploded in recent years, meaning more and more of the mountain's snowmelt is being diverted from rivers to homes and farms. Uh, oh, here's another one of those like interactive. It's probably the same thing that we were just looking at. Yeah, so that's what it was like before. Now this is this is within 5 years between 2011 on this side, what we're looking at right now, and then 2016. You see that? Yeah. Okay, right here it talks about the Owens Lake area, but it adds some more information. A glimpse into the future lies 966 kilometers southwest. This is a European site, by the way. The ground zero of California's Owens Lake. It dried up decades ago, transforming it into America's worst source of dust pollution. Owens Lake disappeared when Los Angeles built an aqueduct on its tributary in the early 1900s. Even now, the wind still kicks up PM10, harmful particulate matter 10 micrometers or smaller, which is breathed in by the few remaining residents in the ghost town. It's a grim precedent for Utah, a haunted picture of what's in store if the drought and human overreach continues. Okay, PM10, harmful particulate matter. And this, I think, is maybe different. Well, I don't know if it is different from what we were reading about the arsenic and stuff like that, because I wonder if this is the same thing or if it's like a kind of like a double whammy. Maybe it is the same thing. I don't know. Because this is just like talking about harmful particulate matter that's 10 micrometers or smaller. So that maybe that could include the arsenic. Okay, I don't know. Um, Still the largest saltwater lake in the Western Hemisphere for now, the Great Salt Lake is at risk of becoming too salty as its water levels drop. If the salt content rises much further, to around 17%, it'll be too much for the algae in the water, threatening the flies and brine shrimp that feed on it. This will have knock-on effects for the 10 million birds that stop by the lake each year. Okay, that's going to be it for this one. It's kind of just like a repeat, but it added a few other details. Now, okay, so I think this has more significance than just the practical significance that we were talking about with how it's going to affect the local population, um, and the implications of what's happening with the planet, which I believe is supposed to happen as it transitions from a telestial to a terrestrial state. That's just my feeling. I just, that's what I think. I'm not going to like really argue that too much, but I think there's more to it. We touched a little bit on the fact that maybe this is part of the Lord having it start upon his own house with judgments, separating wheat and tares, but there's more. There's more, because now we're going to switch over to the Dead Sea. Okay, let's look at what's going on with the Dead Sea. Before we do, let's look at a little bit of context. Oops, I got these mixed up. Move that back here. As I was researching this video, I came across a gem that backs up what I was saying about additional scripture that will come forth in the future. In regards to like talking about the 10 lost tribes. So hold on to your hats, because I'm about to share this one in the very next video. This is from 2006, Dallin H. Oaks, General Conference. Just watch. Okay. All right. So, no, we're gonna go to the teachings of the prophet Joseph Smith. This is on the Scripture Citation Index, page 286. Okay. This section is called "The Prophet on the Second Coming of Christ: Remarks at the Conference of the Church." And right here he says, Judah must return, which has happened, and it is currently happening. More and more Jews are making Aliyah, or going up or immigrating to Israel, the modern nation state of Israel. Judah must return, Jerusalem must be rebuilt, and the temple and water come out from under the temple, and the waters of the Dead Sea be healed. Now, it does seem like this is talking about the actual water from coming from under the temple going to the Dead Sea to be healed. Um, that's the implication here, and that's further proven by footnote 23, because there's two references for this statement. One is in Ezekiel 47, 8 through 9, and we all know this. We all know this. I'm not gonna zoom in on this one. It's just okay. Ezekiel 47 verses 8 and 9. Then said he unto me, this is when he's having that vision. He's talking to the angel. He's seeing the water come out from under the temple in the vision. These waters issue out toward the east country and go down into the desert and go into the sea, which being brought forth into the sea, the waters shall be healed. So what's that talking about? It's talking about the Dead Sea. In case you're not familiar with the geography of Israel, let's go ahead and pull up the map. All right, let's go to satellite view. So here's the Dead Sea. This is Israel's Great Salt Lake, or the Great Salt Lake is Utah's Dead Sea, however you want to think of it. We've done videos about that, comparing the two. It's a very well-known It's a well-known observation that many have made. So the temple, if it was here on the Temple Mount, right? Because there's a couple different views and whatever. So if it was here, it faced east toward the Mount of Olives, and the idea is that water came out from under the temple right here, and then came down here to where the Dead Sea is to heal it. So from here, heading east and south, mostly east, to the Dead Sea. Right. Okay. So verse 9, and it shall come to pass that everything that liveth, which moveth, whithersoever the waters shall come, shall live. And there shall be a very great multitude of fish, because these waters shall come thither. For they shall be healed, and everything shall live whither the river cometh. Now, there is a spiritual level to this. And I think that's primarily what the angel is focusing on in talking to Ezekiel. They've talked about it in conference, how you can liken this to the blessings of the temple, and healing people and bringing people to life, because we're all in a dead state in this fallen world. We're all spiritually dead, but we're made alive through Christ and through the covenant path, which includes the temple. However, it does seem that Joseph Smith is talking about a literal aspect or level to this, where it will actually happen before Christ comes. The other footnote for footnote 23 is Zechariah 14:8, and that says, and it shall be in that day that living waters shall go out from Jerusalem, half of them toward the former sea, and half of them toward the hinder sea. In summer and in winter shall it be. Oh, that rhymed pretty good. I like that. I've done a video about that, actually. not specifically water coming from under the Temple Mount or anything like that, but let me go to my channel, do a search for water. This video, I would encourage you to watch this. The title of my video is Massive Amount of Water Discovered Underneath Jerusalem. And interestingly, the place that they found this was the first building, if I remember right, it's the first building that the Knesset used when Israel became a country. The Knesset is their Congress. So they discovered, up until that point, an unknown source of water underneath the Knesset building, the first Knesset building. So I'm going to put this video, down in the description so you can check it out. And while we're here on the home screen, I would encourage you guys to subscribe to all these mostly ladies. You have Troy here, my friend Troy, with the Last Dispensation channel, and then we have all these sisters that I've been interviewing and will be interviewing. These two right here. There's Megan. I don't know if that's her last name. I don't think it is. And then JoJo, the Joyous Genealogist. I've been talking to her on the phone quite a bit. I'm gonna interview her sometime this week, and then Megan next week. And then we have the other ones that I've interviewed, and or just ones that I've promoted so far. Here's Betty Horn over here. So okay, so make sure to check them out. Okay, so let's go back here. Okay, so Joseph Smith talking about this actually has to happen. Water needs to come out. It needs to heal the Dead Sea. So what's happening with the Dead Sea right now? Well, here's an article from abc.net.au, The Disappearing Dead Sea. The Disappearing Dead Sea. Both the Great Salt Lake and the Dead Sea, they were already dead enough, right? Being mostly having such a high concentration of salt so that fish can't live in it. Only brine shrimp, disgusting. Well, I like brine shrimp, but they are a little bit disgusting. Okay, so they were already dead, but now they're like really dying. And I think we need to like look at this from a biblical and Book of Mormonical and Doctrine and Covenantal standpoint, and think about the implications when it comes to prophecy and what's supposed to happen before the second coming. The Disappearing Dead Sea. It's a natural wonder treasured for the quote-unquote healing powers of its mineral-rich water. Well, I mean, I don't know about that, but the sea at the lowest point on the earth is slipping away. Slipping away. On the shores of the Dead Sea, a village lies in ruins, crumbling into great craters opening up in the earth. So, unlike the Great Salt Lake, I guess the thing that's happening with the Dead Sea, the surrounding area, is that there's a bunch of these like sinkholes that are opening up. That's what it's talking about when it says great craters. This was once the beachside resort at En Gedi, Israel, where families would come to float in the ultra salty lake at the bottom of the world. Now it's a disaster zone, too dangerous to enter. In the late 80s, the first sinkhole appeared here, forcing the tourist park to be abandoned. I've read through these articles like once. I'm not sure if like this same thing would happen with Utah and the Salt Lake area. I don't know, but this is what's happening with the Dead Sea. Since then, the sinkholes have continued to appear with alarming frequency, leaving behind a shattered landscape. So, really interesting things are happening with the Dead Sea. Again, it's dying in the sense that it's actually going away. Sinkholes are opening up. You know, maybe this is more on the cinematic side whenever this gets healed by fresh water. A stretch of highway skirting the village has been swallowed, its surface crazed and buckled where the ground beneath has collapsed. The road might look long abandoned, but only 5 years ago, cars were still using it, their drivers unaware that the ground was rapidly hollowing out. Jeez. In the past 4 decades, over 6,000 sinkholes have appeared along the Israeli side of the Dead Sea. 6,000, making large sections of the coast too dangerous to enter. Uh, what turned this natural treasure into a trap is simple. The Dead Sea is vanishing. So just like the Great Salt Lake. So if the fact that it's vanishing is making this happen, is this going to start to happen in Utah? I don't know. Maybe the geology is different. I don't know. I'm not an expert. But anyway, slipping away. Um, I'm going to continue on here. The Dead Sea's water level is declining by more than a meter a year. That's a lot. That is a lot. More than a meter a year. And its surface area has shrunk by around a third since the 1960s. So the Great Salt Lake, what was it? I think it was 2/3. It's shrunk by 2/3, and then the Dead Sea has shrunk by a third since the 1960s. Environmental groups say this is a man-made ecological disaster, the result of a fight over scarce water sources in an arid region. So it's essentially it's essentially the same thing. People need the fresh water. There's scarcity, and so a portion of the water that would go to the Dead Sea is no longer going there. And then on top of that, there's climate change. The Earth is heating up. Those two things are making this happen. I pulled up a drought monitor for this is drought.gov/international. It's not quite as good, or it doesn't look as good as the US map, but here you have Israel in the center, and you have dark red. You have dark red, and the Dead Sea. I'm not exactly sure, but I think it's pretty. It looks like I think it's pretty solidly in this dark red area. But the country of Israel and the surrounding areas are not looking too good. They're not looking too good. There's a lot of dark red in the Mideast. You see it in Jordan, Syria, Iraq, some in Saudi Arabia. The Sinai Peninsula of Egypt is pretty red. Turkey, there's a lot of red up there. Iran. So, not good. Not good. Okay. Bordered by Israel, Jordan, and the West Bank, the Dead Sea's water level is largely maintained by inflows from the Sea of Galilee and the Jordan River in the north. Right? We all know that. Jordan River, that's where Christ got baptized by John the Baptist. And there is the Sea of Galilee. This is Israel's Utah Lake, and Utah Lake is Utah's Sea of Galilee. So you have water coming from the Sea of Galilee down the Jordan River to the Dead Sea. And in case you're not familiar with, I think technically they're called Salton Seas and also terminal lakes. What makes them salty is that you have water sources that are kind of like pooling where the lake is, but there's no outflow. So just all the nastiness, like all the minerals and garbage, sewage, whatever, it all comes there and it makes it a gross lake. and it literally stinks. I'm sure that the Dead Sea stinks just like the Great Salt Lake stinks. So, one of the main inflows is from the Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee, Israel's Utah Lake. All right. In recent decades, that flow has been reduced to a trickle. Well, that's hard to picture. You kind of think of the Jordan River as a river, but I don't know what a trickle means. I mean, this is not quantitative, but that doesn't sound good. Farming and industrial scale mineral extraction are removing more water than can be replenished through natural means. How the sinkholes form. Don't care too much about that. If you do, then you can come to this article and check it out for yourself. Here's a little graphic. Oh, okay. Well, there you go. So you have like the water kind of like what I'm not going to go into it. You can go look at it if you want. Um, underground rivers. Underground rivers. Just south of En Gedi is a floodplain where winter rains wash down from the Judean mountains into the Dead Sea. This place is now too dangerous for the general public to enter. Only scientists are allowed to come here. The cracked and rocky landscape used to be underwater, but now it's an expanding mudflat, pockmarked with dangerous sinkholes. Yeah, these don't even look like valleys, uh, more than sinkholes. Um, it's the perfect place for scientists to study the role flash floods are playing in their formation. For more than a decade, geologists Gideon Bear and Itai Gavrieli have been coming here to monitor the winter rains that rush over these dry riverbeds into the Dead Sea. The senior scientists from Geological Survey of Israel have observed dramatic changes in how water moves through the cratered landscape. The flash floods used to flow directly to the Dead Sea, says Dr. Bear. But since a few sinkholes formed along the riverbeds, flash floods started to be swallowed into these sinkholes and moved eastwards toward the Dead Sea, but underground. Okay. I can't remember how much more I may have highlighted. I'm just going to go a little bit quicker. Uh, Over time, we envision that the entire area will be a huge sinkhole. Oh my gosh. Um, where all the water went. At the south end of the Dead Sea, tourists float in the briny turquoise water, unaware that they are not swimming in the natural sea. Okay. And by the way, she's not sinking because the salinity of the lake. Like if you're in the Great Salt Lake, um, it's more. There's like more buoyancy, basically. There are no sinkholes here, and the public beach has a stable shoreline. It is part of the lake. In this part of the lake, the water level is artificially controlled. Water is pumped in here only to be evaporated. The Dead Sea's southern basin has turned into an industrial landscape of shallow, evaporated ponds where huge factories in Jordan and Israel extract valuable minerals. The factories which make potash for fertilizer and a host of other products use about 500 million cubic meters of water per year, roughly the volume of Sydney Harbor. They return about half of that into the sea, but still account for roughly 25% of the water loss, according to the Geological Survey of Israel. To understand where the rest of the water is lost from the Dead Sea, you have to go north to its source, the Jordan River, where it flows from the Sea of Galilee. With its rich, verdant farmlands, it's hard to believe the Jordan Valley is critically short of water. Like many arid parts of Israel and Jordan, the former desert is now intensively irrigated, requiring millions of cubic meters of water from the Sea of Galilee to sustain agriculture. Um, Syria and Jordan also began to take water from the Jordan's tributaries, and in the mid 1990s, Jordan began receiving water from the Sea of Galilee under a peace treaty with Israel. The price was the loss of most of the flow down the Jordan River to the famous waterway central to the world's great monotheistic religions. The Dead Sea is no longer replenished, losing billions of liters of evaporation to evaporation in summer temperatures that have stretched to nearly 50 degrees Celsius. So I'm probably just going to end it there. Okay, I'm going to end it here. But the situation is that these already dead terminal saltine or saltine seas, uh, dead seas. They were already what they were, and now they're starting to go away and leave their nastiness behind and becoming even worse than what they already were. And when I say worse, I just mean like gross, but now like dangerous. Now they're becoming dangerous areas, and they're a danger to the areas around them. This article didn't mention anything about poisonous gas or anything coming from the lake, but we'll just have to kind of see what happens. But I think that this ties into prophecy because can you imagine the Dead Sea? I don't know if something similar would happen with the Great Salt Lake. I haven't heard anything like that, but could you imagine the Dead Sea being healed and how dramatic that would be after going through what's going on right now with it disappearing? That would be actually pretty dramatic and cinematic. So I guess I have to walk back some of my views before, but this is one thing that may be kind of cinematic as you're watching it happen. So make of this what you will. I do think that there's biblical implications, spiritual implications. Maybe this will cause a few more people to move to the Midwest. This may be one of the many ways that the Lord seems to be moving people to this area where New Jerusalem is going to be. I was brought here because of home prices. I wanted a homestead, and this was the only place that we could afford to buy land. Other people are coming here because of the ridiculous house prices. Maybe more will come because of this, because this is actually now turning into a health concern with the Great Salt Lake. That maybe they'll stop it in time. I don't know, but maybe not. Maybe not. But the Lord works in mysterious ways. There's a lot of moving parts, and we'll just have to see what the future holds. All right, so that's going to be it for this one. So, hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.